Right now, thousands of teenagers are logging onto Reddit to talk about an addiction they do not know how to break. They aren't discussing drugs or standard social media. They are talking about their AI companions. Researchers at Drexel University recently analyzed over 300 of these self-reported experiences. They looked closely at posts from users between 13 and 17 years old who voluntarily wrote about their severe over-reliance on interactive platforms like Character.ai. This chart shows exactly what these teenagers seek. You can see a massive spike here. Nearly 25% of the analyzed posts detail using the chatbot for emotional support. Only about 5% report using it for simple entertainment. The language these kids use maps directly to clinical frameworks for behavioral addiction. They describe intense conflict, severe withdrawal, and frequent relapse. They are forming deep psychological dependencies in the shadows of the internet. Closing a traditional app or turning off a video game feels like stopping a habit, but closing a conversation with an AI companion feels entirely different because the system is specifically built to respond emotionally. These platforms process text, voice, and images, combining them with persistent memory to simulate personalized empathy in a targeted response loop. Because the system adapts to their feelings, stepping away feels like abandoning a relationship, making over-reliance incredibly difficult to break. These experiences are the direct result of specific design choices. By prioritizing multimodality and memory, platforms create an environment that favors deep emotional dependency. State governments are trying to catch up, but the sheer volume of activity is staggering. In Illinois, lawmakers introduced so many AI bills in a single legislative session that the state Senate had to form a dedicated committee just to organize them. Illinois set its foundation in August 2025 by passing the Whopper Act. It is currently the most comprehensive law of its kind in the country, and it strictly bans artificial intelligence from making independent therapeutic decisions. This pyramid illustrates the law's strict boundaries for clinical settings. Down here in the green, it permits AI to handle administrative tasks like scheduling and billing. But up at the top in red, it completely prohibits AI from engaging in direct therapeutic communication or detecting a user's emotional state. Now, lawmakers are frantically trying to patch the holes in that foundation. They're stacking new bills onto the pyramid to ban platforms from marketing themselves as therapists, and adding specific rules to stop chatbots from encouraging self-harm in minors. Regulators are trying to force interactive, fluid software into rigid legal categories. While the legislative machinery grinds away at these definitions, the teenagers actually relying on the technology fall straight through the cracks. Under heavy legal pressure, including an investigation by the Texas Attorney General for deceptive mental health marketing, platforms are scrambling to prove they are safe. Character.ai recently rolled out mandatory face scan technology to estimate a user's age via their camera. The rollout caused immediate friction. Adult users found themselves suddenly locked out mid-session, and community forums flooded with reports of technical errors and failed verifications. The core issue runs much deeper than age gating. A recent peer-reviewed legal analysis of the Illinois law showed that legislation simply cannot clearly define the boundary between helpful software and clinical therapy. For example, if an AI generates an asynchronous mood check-in between doctor visits, does that count as permissible supplementary support or illegal therapeutic communication? What about a risk-flagging algorithm that alerts a clinician when a patient's mood deteriorates? The law struggles to answer. These ambiguities reveal why strategies like age verification fall short. They act as corporate compliance shields. A teenager who successfully passes a face scan but still develops a severe behavioral addiction remains entirely unprotected. We do not even have a consistent word for the people most affected by these decisions. In clinical settings, they are clients. To tech platforms, they are users. The language itself is fractured. Parents currently have almost zero proactive access to the regulatory process. The main way a family earns a seat at the table right now is by filing a wrongful death lawsuit after a tragedy has occurred. Nobody invited the teenagers to a legislative hearing. They are testifying anyway, writing out their experiences to total strangers on Reddit because they have nowhere else to go. Legislators write the bills and engineers build the models, but the people living inside the problem are left on the outside. Our inability to agree on what to call them proves the entire system was constructed without centering the human being. This diagram shows a proposed standard for clinical integration. It outlines 4 critical pillars: clinical evidence, crisis safety protocols, therapeutic fidelity, and strict legal compliance. Like traditional psychology, AI tools must prove their safety and efficacy before reaching the public. But checking boxes on a compliance form is not enough. Society has to demand a shift from merely regulating software features to requiring actual human oversight. The therapist-in-the-loop model integrates a licensed professional into the core of the technology. This structure ensures that human judgment manages the emotional interactions the software creates. Reversing the trend of algorithmic emotional dependency requires rebuilding these platforms with human oversight as the primary structural requirement. When the technology is anchored by professional clinical standards, it begins to support human growth instead of exploiting human isolation.